infection. Dongri, we'll start the history of the organism and the disease. The first hint was given in the 1981 in the New York. There was a sudden unexplained outbreak of two very rare diseases, that is the Kaposi sarcoma and Pneumocystis carinii pneumoniae. Kaposi sarcoma is the cancer and Pneumocystis carinii pneumoniae is the usually it was called as parasite. Now it has been referred as the fungus. So it is in between these two categories. And mainly these infections or these cancers have been found in the homosexuals and in the drug addicts. Later in 1983, Montagnier and colleagues from the Pasteur Institute isolated a retrovirus from a West African patient with persistent generalized lymphadenopathy, which commonly called as PGL. It was called as lymphoadenopathy associated virus, LAV. Further in 1984, Robert Gallo and colleagues from the National Institute of Health reported a retrovirus from AIDS patient, and they have named it as a human T lymphotrophic virus 3, or in short HTLV3. In 1985, serological test ELISA became available for detection of the antibodies. So in 1985, if someone used to check got the request for ELISA, that time they used to suspect that the patient might be suffering from HIV infections. It was that much associated. But now if you talk about the ELISA, we have ELISA for various other reasons. Okay. In 1986, given the name human immunodeficiency virus, as the name is given because it is responsible for deficiency in the immune response of the human host. And rate of infection has been steadily increasing since then, after 1986. India had 2.1 million people living with HIV, and this data is from 2016. In India, India has registered almost 20% annual decline in new infections over the last few years. This could be because of the awareness of the prevention of the HIV viruses, and that is why you could see here 20% annual decline in the new infections. Globally, new HIV infections fell by 16% to 1.8 million in 2016. But the pace of global decline is too slow to reach the UN's fast-track target of fewer than 500,000 new infections per year by 2020. So that target is still to be achieved. In 2016, 500 people were still getting infected with HIV every day. So it is not yet, significantly reduced, but to a certain extent you can say that because of the education and all the awareness programs run by the different institutes, governments and NGOs, we could able to see the decline rate in the HIV infections. Now we'll see what is the family of these viruses. The family is Retroviridae and subgroup is lentiviruses. So these HIV viruses comes under the Retroviridae family, and amongst the Retroviridae family, the lentiviruses are the subgroup. These are involved in causing slow virus diseases in animals, and we have seen this Visna and Mate in sheep in the prion diseases. Okay, and these are mainly causing the immunodeficiency. In primates, HIV types 1, 2 are involved. Simian immunodeficiency virus causing simian acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. And this was isolated from Sooty mangabes, one of the type of monkeys, and from Rhesus macaque, closely related to HIV type 2. They are also isolated from the chimpanzees closely related to HIV type 1. So if you see, there are two types, HIV1 and HIV2. In India, HIV1 is more common. Amongst the HIV1, type C is more common in India than the type A and type B. In non-primates, feline T lymphotropic viruses causing feline AIDS have also been detected. Coming to the HIV structure. In the HIV structure, it is a spherical enveloped virus. We have seen this enveloped, non-enveloped DNA or RNA viruses, classification in the general properties of the viruses. So HIV is a spherical enveloped virus measuring in the size of 90 to 120 nanometer in size. Nucleocapsid has outer icosahedral shell and an inner core shaped core, which will protect the RNA. So you can see here the diagram of the HIV viruses. You can see on the outer surface, okay, on the outer surface, there are certain spikes. Those spikes in the blue color star shape, you can see GP120, glycoprotein, it is glycoprotein 120. And that GP120, again, there is one subunit, that is GP41, okay. And then after that, you have a P17 GAC protein. And then after that, you have the P24 GAC protein. This P24 antigen, if you detect in the first few weeks of the illness of the HIV infection, that means right now the HIV virus is there in the patient's body. So P24 antigen can be a marker for detecting the recent infection or the current infection. Then after that, P24, there are two strands of RNA material, genetic material, and where viral RNA is there, and on that you have the enzyme, which is one of the typical reverse transcriptase enzyme, which is one of the typical characteristics of the HIV virus. Okay, if we try to find out the different genes in the HIV viruses, there are mainly two types of genes which are there in the HIV viruses. One is the structural genes and another one is the non-structural genes. Structural genes include GAC protein, Pol protein and ENV protein. These are the short forms. And Pol is polymerase, ENV is the envelope. These in the GAC structural genes, core antigen is denoted by P24 and the shell antigen is denoted by P17. And the polymerase is denoted by RT enzyme, protease, endonucleases, which are present inside the nucleocapsid, and the envelope protein, which are there in the outer surface of the structural genes, that includes GP160, GP120, and GP41. So this constitutes the structural genes. While the non-structural genes, there is TAT gene, NEF gene, REV gene, VIF, VPU gene, and VPR gene. So all these genes makes up the entire HIV viruses. Now, if you look at the major antigens of human immunodeficiency viruses, there are several antigens which are present in the HIV. First is the envelope antigen. And this envelope antigens, there are two antigens. One is the spike antigen. Now you have heard this spike antigen for the coronaviruses. So spike antigen is nothing but on the surface there is a spike protein which represents the antigen only. Here it is GP120. And there is a transmembrane pedicle protein which is GP41. You might have seen in the previous slide there is a structure when I shown the structure, the star shape, and then there is a oval shape. That oval shape is nothing but the transmembrane GP41 antigen. Then there is a shell antigen, nucleocapsid antigen, which is denoted as P18. And after that, you have a core antigen, and the principal core antigen is P24. And this P24 makes the basis of antigen detection for various tests to denote or to diagnose that the HIV virus is right now present in the patient body. And then other antigens are also there, which are denoted by P stands for protein, of course, P15, P55. And finally, there are polymerase antigens, which means that the enzymes which are present in the nucleic acid, that is the P31 and P66. What is the importance of antigenic variation and diversity of human immunodeficiency virus? HIV is a highly mutagenic due to error-prone nature of reverse transcription. What happens in reverse transcription? Generally, transcription is from mRNA to the double-stranded DNA, and then it is transcribed into protein and then the amino acids. Here in the reverse, why it is called as reverse? Because here RNA, which is a single stranded, is converted into double stranded DNA, and then again it is converted into single stranded DNA, and then there is amplification. So that is why while these steps are occurring, there is a chance that a higher chance, of course, not only chance, there is a high chance that error can occur in the transcription. So that is why there are lots of mutation occurs in the HIV virus. And this is the only reason why we do not have the vaccine till date. There are lots of experimental vaccines which are going on, but still no one has claimed that now if you take this vaccine, you will be able to prevent the HIV infections. And the reason is the highly mutagenic properties of this virus. Mostly seen in envelope antigen and to some extent in other antigens. Why envelope antigens? Because that is the key to the binding to the host cell. So what happens when these antigens which are present on this envelope surface, they change themselves. So our immune response does not have the memory cells for the previous antigen which was there on the envelope. So they change that envelope antigen so that your immune system does not recognize these new antigen. Again, by the time it recognizes, produces the antibodies, the already the immune HIV has its deleterious effect on the host. And this is the beauty of the mechanism of the antigenic variation or highly mutagenic variation characteristics of this virus. And that is why we could not able to have the vaccine till date, a perfect candidate of vaccine to prevent the disease. As I was referring, there are two types, HIV-1 and HIV-2. If you look at the geographical distribution, HIV-2 is more commonly seen in the Africa, and that has been isolated from macaques. And HIV-1 is isolated from West Africa, 1986, and there are 10 subtypes, and these subtypes are characterized on the basis of the various surface antigens. And they are classified as A to J based on the GAG and envelope genes. They are widely distributed. So HIV-1 is very commonly seen in the entire world. In the Africa, A, Type C, and Type D are common. In Asian countries, E, C, B are common. In Thailand, E is common. India and China, C is common. So HIV-1 is common, and under that, Type C is more common in India and China. If you look at the proportion of HIV subtypes in India, so you can see here, it's a 91% cases belongs to type C, while type 3, the type A and type B and others are 3%. So majority of the infections are caused by HIV-1 subtype C. Coming to the resistance shown by this organism, this is very important for the survival of these viruses in the environment. It is thermolabile, inactivated within 10 minutes at 60 degrees Celsius and in seconds at 100 degrees Celsius. So whatever the pasteurization or boiling will take care of these viruses. At room temperature in dried blood survive up to 7 days, which is quite worrisome. It can easily inactivated in 10 minutes by treatment with 50% ethanol, 35% isopropanol. These are the common disinfectants which we use in the hospital as a disinfecting agents. 0.5% Lysol, 0.5% paraformaldehyde. This is the strongest disinfecting agent. 0.3% hydrogen peroxide and 10% household bleach, which is hypochlorite solution. It can be inactivated to the extreme pH, that is 1 and 13. So acidic pH and the alkaline pH easily destroys or inactivated this virus. For treatment of medical instruments, 2% glutaraldehyde is used, which is a good disinfectant to kill or to inactivate the HIV viruses. Now coming to the pathogenesis of this virus. Very important, when virus tries to enter the host cell, it has to have a cell which is having the receptors which are specific to the envelope antigen receptor of the HIV viruses. So which are the most commonly seen cells which has these receptors, CCR5 or CR5, CXR5, all these receptors, those are CD4 cells. So the primary cells which are affected by the HIV viruses are the CD4 cells. This could be one of the MCQ also. So these CD4 plus T lymphocytes, majority, and then some of the B lymphocytes, that is 5 to 10%, and some 10 to 20% monocytes and macrophages can also harbor the viruses. But majority these viruses enters into the CD4 cells because of the commonly seen receptors on that cell. GP120 binds to these CD4 receptor cells, and there will be cell fusion, that is with the help of GP41. So both the glycoprotein which are present in the outside the surface and in the cell surface are responsible for internalizing or cell fusion of the viruses and the cell. If you remember our first lecture or even in the second lecture, I have shown you the diagram how the virus attaches to the cell and how it inserts its genetic material into the protoplasm or cytoplasm of the host cell. That is the penetration, attachment and then penetration. And attachment occurs only when you have CD4 receptors on these CD4 cells. Okay, T lymphocytes mainly. Binding also requires participation of a co-receptor. It has to have the co-receptors onto the CD4 cells like CXCR4 for T cell tropic HIV strains, CCR5 for macrophage tropic strains. So these are the co-receptors which are also required for binding to the host cell. After fusion, after binding, HIV genome is uncoated. You have seen the diagram. Once it has entered, it has to uncoat. Then the RT transcribes RNA into reverse transcriptase enzymes, transcribes RNA into single then double-stranded DNA. This is why it is called as reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. This DNA integrates into the genome of the infected cell. What happens later? It remains quiet for a long time. That is also called as latent infection. I have told you the window period. This is what is the virus entered today, but after a few months, it does not want to have its progeny. So it just remains dormant in the host DNA as a latent. From time to time, whenever it wants to have their progeny, lytic cycle is initiated, and then there will be a release of the viruses and infect another cells. This is how they maintain into the host body their progeny. Until they want to multiply, want to have their progeny, they do not multiply. Once the immune system goes down of that patient, they try to multiply, and they come out of that cell by lysis, and then they attach to the new host cells, and they again enter into the host DNA and remains quiet, or again they have their progeny. This is how virus replication takes place. Long and variable incubation period is because of this lentacing. I told you this. Most of the time what happens, you see the person is positive for HIV, but he does not suffer from the disease or any syndrome. It is because the virus remained latent in the host body. It does not want to have its progeny, and that is why there is a long incubation period. This is what I was referring again. First is binding, then fusion, then reverse transcriptation, then integration, then replication, then assembly, and then come out. Sorry, binding or budding. What happens during this stage? There is a damage to this CD4 T lymphocytes. T4 cells decreases in the number, and T4 T8 ratio is reversed. If T8 is increased, it means that the active multiplication is taking place. That's why CD4 cells are being killed by CD8 cells. T8 cells are nothing but killer cells. Suppress the function of cell without any structural damage. T4 cells do not release normal amount of interleukin 2, gamma interferon, and other lymphokines. The cell-mediated immunity is affected. Humoral immunity is also affected, particularly in the response to the thymus-dependent antigens. AIDS patients unable to respond to the new antigens. Polyclonal activation of B lymphocytes, because of which you might see hypergammaglobulinemia in the HIV positive patient. Useless immunoglobulins or to irrelevant antigens, autoantibodies can also be found. Due to lack of activating factors, monocyte macrophage function is affected. Chemotaxis, antigen presentation, and intracellular killing will also affect. Now, what is the acquired immune deficiency syndrome? Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome is the last stage. If the patient is diagnosed as the AIDS, it means that patient is in the last stage. Centers for Disease Control, this is something which is there in the USA, classified clinical course of HIV infection in various groups. Acute HIV infection seroconversion illness within 3 to 6 weeks of infection. 50% of cases shows low-grade fever, malaise, headache, lymphadenopathy, rarely acute encephalopathy. These are the commonly seen the signs during first 3 to 6 weeks of infection. Then what happens? Spontaneous resolution within weeks. And then HIV antibody test negative at the onset becomes positive during the course, seroconversion illness. Why? In the first phase of the disease, the humoral immune response is in the developing stage. After 5 to 6 days, this starts producing the antibody. But what happens if the virus goes into the cell and remains latent? So the immune response will not come to know, and they will not produce any antibodies. So we have studied in the ELISA, during ELISA in our practical gray zone phenomena I was talking about. If you do not get the clear-cut result, either it is negative or positive, it is because this might be the reason why there are no antibodies or very less antibodies, because either it is in the latent phase or it could be in the developing state. But here HIV antigenemia, that is P24 antigen, is demonstrated. So in the first, you cannot sit idle, you can demonstrate the P24 antigen due to direct effects of viral multiplication and due to immune complexes. Second stage, asymptomatic or latent infection. What happens? All infected person pass through a phase of latent infection, last up to several years. Usually 3 to 6 months is the incubation period. But I have seen patients when I was working in National AIDS Research Institute. There are people who were living with the AIDS for 20 years. Nothing has happened to them. It might be because either their immune response is very good, which is controlling the viral replication, or the virus is in the latent form throughout these years, does not want to have its progeny. That is the another reason. HIV antibody test positive and are infectious. Of course, these people are positive and are infectious. CD4 lymphocytopenia, minor opportunistic infection starts developing in these patients. Generalized lymphadenopathy can also be seen, and that is also called as AIDS related complex or acute immunodeficiency syndrome. So from here onwards, the AIDS manifestation takes place in the patient. Clinical latency has been seen up to 10 or 15 years or more also. Long-term survivors or long-term progressors are also seen. I have told you there was one patient I know who was there for 20 years. Nothing has happened. Nothing. Is still good, in strong health. Everything was good. So this clinical latency is seen in few patients, and the researchers are still trying to find out what are the different reasons why these people did not go to the rapid progression into the AIDS. CD4 count decreases from 1000 to 5000 or less per microliters. This is the count which were seen in the second stage of the disease. And third stage, it is the persistent generalized lymphadenopathy. Name itself is saying that there is a adenopathy, lymphadenopathy. Enlarged lymph nodes, 1 centimeter in diameter, 2 or more extra inguinal sites, persist for 3 months in the absence of any current illness or medication that may cause lymphadenopathy. So this is the third stage. Persistent generalized lymphadenopathy. And now this is the another stage, fourth stage, AIDS related complex, ARC. Considered considerable immunodeficiency. Now in this stage of disease or disorder, syndrome, the patient has the considerable immunodeficiency. There are lots of other infections takes place in this patient, like tuberculosis, because we know that tuberculosis are there in our lungs as a Gons fossa, and those get reactivated, and that is why in HIV positive or in AIDS patient, TB is the first disease which comes positive in the HIV patient. Constitution symptoms: fatigue, unexplained fever, persistent diarrhea, weight loss. Weight loss is the very commonly seen in these patients, more than 10% of body weight. That is very severe, and you can identify it as a full-blown AIDS also. Minor opportunistic infections like oral candidiasis, which you are going to treat this patient. Oral candidiasis, herpes zoster. Madam has taken this oral candidiasis lecture already. Herpes zoster, which I have narrated in one of the lecture. I'll take it again in the herpes viruses lecture. Hairy cell leukoplakia, salmonellosis, tuberculosis, generalized lymphadenopathy, and this progresses to the AIDS in few months. So sure shot, the patient will turn into the full-blown AIDS. And now this is the fifth stage, which is also called as end stage of the disease. Irreversible breakdown of immune defense mechanism. It has damaged so much that any organism can cause infection in these patients when they turn out to be the fifth stage of the AIDS. Irreversible breakdown of the immune defense mechanism. Respiratory system, you name the organisms, the infections are there in the HIV positive patients, in the AIDS patient, like pneumocystis carrying pneumonia, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Mycobacterium avium intracellular infection, viral pneumonia mainly caused by cytomegaloviruses, fungal pneumonia may be caused by cryptococcosis, histoplasma, aspergillosis, mucormycosis. Even you can see this, the normal flora which are there, they can also have the infections in these patients. Okay, in the gastrointestinal tract, mouth, thrush, herpetic stomatitis, gingivitis, hairy leukoplakia, Kaposi's sarcoma, and in the intestinal infections, Cryptosporidium, Isospora, Salmonella, Mycobacteria, CMV or adenoviruses, and systemic spondyloidosis. This is the parasitic infection. If you see in the central nervous system, it is the toxoplasmosis, cryptococcosis. Name the organism, you have the infections in these patients, because now there is a complete damage to the immune response. The host does not show any kind of immune response to any organism invaded in these positive patients. And that is why you will see number of infections to the number of systems in these positive patients. In CNS, Toxoplasma, Cryptococcosis, CMV, cytomegalovirus, herpes simplex virus, Aspergillus, Candida, tuberculosis, and then lymphomas of CNS. Malignancies, Kaposi's sarcoma in male homosexuals, Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's lymphomas. Then in the cutaneous skin, Kaposi's sarcoma again, herpes lesions. Then seborrheic, dermatitis, folliculitis, impetigo, molluscum contagiosum. All these can occur in the full-blown AIDS patients. Sometimes the patient may go in dementia, cytopathogenic damage to central nervous system, which it is because crossing the blood-brain barrier, and which leads to encephalopathy, and then it leads to the dementia. So one of the reason in HIV positive patient, dementia is the crossing over. And then pediatric AIDS. In the pediatric AIDS, what happens? 30 to 50% babies born to infected mother are HIV infected. So the mother is positive. There are chances that 30 to 50% will the children will also get the infection from their mother. Viral transmission, the first trimester prenatally more common. Many of infected babies may not survive more than 1 year. Transfusion of blood and blood products can also be the source of infection to the pediatric patients. Children develop humoral immunodeficiency early because of this HIV infection, and that is why they are more recurrent for bacterial infections. Failure to thrive, chronic diarrhea, lymphadenopathy, and of course the tuberculosis can be seen. Now you can see some of the clinical pictures of the AIDS patient. This is the herpes zoster infection. You can see here all the area has been covered up. HIV vasculitis. This is the clinical picture of HIV vasculitis. This is the Kaposi's sarcoma, skin infection, oral hairy leukoplakia. This you are going to experience in your fourth year when you are studying taking the patients oral hairy leukoplakia. Then here herpes simplex virus, chronic gingivitis or periodontitis can be caused by the herpes simplex viruses. These are all in the HIV positive infections, of course. Independently, they are also pathogenic, but in HIV positive, they are more pathogenic. Herpes simplex keratitis, Then esophageal candidiasis. This you can see, you cannot make out where is the tongue. Okay, so this is the oral candidiasis, the esophagus. Then pneumocystis carrying pneumonia. You can see such hazy consolidation throughout the lungs, and the patient will not be able to breathe properly, and we turn out to be fatal to that patient. Then CMV retinitis is common in HIV positive patients. Now, how will you diagnose in the laboratory all these infections? First is the immunological test. In the immunological test, we do very basic tests like total leukocytes, lymphocyte count to demonstrate leukopenia and a lymphocyte count below 2000 millimeter cube. That can be a very preliminary test, which can say that it could be something which is wrong in that patient. You cannot say directly that the count is low, that means it is HIV positive. No, no. These are just basic tests. Then T cell subset assays to know whether CD4 cells are less than 200, or there is a difference between the T4 T8 ratio. If T8 is more, that could be one of the reason why you can say that it is because of the HIV positive. Platelet count, thrombocytopenia can be seen in the patient. Raised immunoglobulins IgG and IgA levels. Diminished cell-mediated immune response indicated by skin test. Then lymph node biopsy showing profound abnormalities. These are the basic tests. Now, what are the specific tests for the HIV infection? Antigen detection. I told you in the first week, detectable after about 2 weeks of infection. The major core antigen, that is P24, is the earliest marker which you can detect in the patients. You cannot detect antibody in this stage, you can detect at least antigen, that is P24. Then IgM antibodies. Why IgM antibodies? Because these are the latest antibodies which appears first up to 4 to 6 weeks. And then P24 antigen capture assay can also be used to detect the antigen. Then you can also isolate the viruses, can be isolated from peripheral lymphocytes. Then you can do the molecular tests such as polymerase chain reaction. Then you can do the ELISA test, serological test as a screening test, and Western blot as the confirmatory test. How are you going to use this knowledge of which test I should do when? That is the application of serological test. If you look at the 1, 2, 3, one is a screening, second is the seroepidemiology, then diagnosis, and then prognosis. Prognosis to know whether it is good or bad. Okay. Sequence of appearance of P24 antigen antibodies after massive infection. In the first 2 weeks, you can use the P24 antigen assay. From 3 to 8 or 10 weeks, you can detect the IgM antibodies. And after 5 to 6 weeks, you can detect the IgG antibodies. This is how you should go algorithm for the diagnosis of the infection. What are the common modes of transmission of HIV and relative risk? Types of exposure: sexual intercourse, 1.1 to 1%. Blood and blood products, 90%, because you're directly transfusing the T lymphocyte. That is why the infection rate is very high. Tissue and organ donation, 50 to 90%. Injection and injuries, here you all have to be very careful. A patient who is coming to you, your OPD, may or may not show symptoms, but you have to consider that he or she may be positive for HIV. So you should have the standard precautions like wearing the gloves, mask, safety injection practices and all that. Because if you get the injury from these patients, there are chances that 0.5% to 1% infection can occur in the healthcare worker and in the dentist also. Mother to baby, 30%, which we have seen in the earliest slides. Now, if you look at the AIDS sexually, 84.53%, and then device, the devices which are used in blood products, then the amount of percentage is very less. What are the prophylaxis? Health education. There is only education which will be important in restricting these infection and further spread. Identification of sources. You have to find out who is positive, and you have to counsel that patient that you are positive. You cannot have unsafe sex with your partners. Otherwise, what will happen? Your partner will become HIV positive. During these counseling sessions, we have to be very careful because this is a very sensitive issue to counsel a patient as positive. Then what? Elimination of the high risk activities. Then high risk activities, multiple sex partners should be prohibited. Safe sex practices should be implemented. There is why? Because there is no specific vaccine available and once the person is positive for HIV, will remain positive for the whole life. If he is unmarried, cannot marry. If he has to marry, he has to marry a positive patient only, because if at all he or she is interested in marrying. High mutability is the reason of all these precautions to be taken. Diverse antigenic types and subtypes we have C, we know because we have majority of the cases belongs to type C. And one of the constraint is the long latency and persistence in the infected cells as pro-virus, lack of a suitable experimental animal for finding out the vaccines or developing the vaccines. Several possible strategies have been tried. Modified whole viruses was used as a vaccine, but that can lead to infection to the patient. So that was gone now. Subunit based on envelope glycoproteins expressed in animals, bacteria, viruses have been used, and they have shown some amount of good response. But again, that is not 100% sure. Then the target cell protection by anti-CD4 antibodies or genetically engineering and CD4s. These are the few strategies, prophylactic strategy which are going on. Treatment and prophylaxis of infections and tumors. General management is required. Immunorestorative measures are taken because massive damage has been done by this virus in the immune response. Specific anti-HIV agents are also used. There are certain antiretroviral drugs which can be used, like for example, zidovudine, didanosine, zalcitabine, lamivudine. These are the nucleoside analogs which can block the transcription. And then there are certain protease inhibitors, saquinavir, ritonavir, indinavir. These can be used as a monotherapy or various combinations. Now, what are the opportunistic infections in AIDS? You can see here the bacterial, mainly tuberculosis, Mycobacterium avium complex, Salmonella septicemia. Then fungal, Candidase is the topmost, followed by Cryptococci, and then Pneumocystis pneumoniae, carrying pneumonia. Parasitic, Cryptosporidiosis, Toxoplasmosis, Coccidiomycosis. These are the list you have to enlist whenever you get a short answer question on these. So this table is very important. You can take a screenshot also. Then viruses, cytomegaloviruses, herpes simplex viruses. And in the cancers, Kaposi sarcoma, invasive cervical cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma can also be seen as a porcinic infections in the. Okay, this is all about the HIV viruses and porcinic infections. This chapter is very important, not as a what you can say only the exam point of view, but definitely it is very important as the dental professional point of view. You are going to get experience these what you can say infections in your in the professional life. So you have to be very knowledgeable about different aspects of HIV, the diagnosis, laboratory diagnosis, and what are the preventive measures needs to be taken. All these things needs to be taken care of whenever you encounter these patients in your clinics. I think I have done. And Saturday, I have posted on the Teams that there will be no lecture, but we have to conduct something. So we have written tutorial. You just have to log in and keep it for a few 20. You just log it in. That's it. And then after that, you can leave after half an hour. Because we just want to find out the presentee. So that day, Prayag or Arya will check how many people have joined the tutorial. Okay, so this is all. This is all you need to do on this Saturday, 9:15 to 10. So you be there till 10 o'clock and then you can leave. And there was a machine who was fogging the entire. So I'm just leaving. Okay. I'm sorry. Arya or Prayag, you just take out the attendance and post it on our group. Thank you and all the best for your exam.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
धन्यवाद. Thank you, sir.